I think the biggest lesson I learned is you could literally do anything you want to.
For people who are maybe in a similar situation where they feel like they're holding on to something because it's like what's comfortable and what's normal, but sometimes seasons need to change.
I never ran a business. I don't have a business degree. I don't know anything about business, but you just kind of go one foot in front of the other and then you learn all the lessons as you go.
It sucks in the moment, right? But that's really the only way.
You have to get armbar to know how to defend an armbar, right? Like you can't go, let me learn everything. Let me watch all these tutorials and then I'll just jump in first day and get all 4 stripes at the same. It doesn't work that way. You get your ass kicked and then you learn.
I think it's easy to get caught up on the fear of like, well, what if it ends up not working out?
Business is one of those things where they'll never not have problems and they'll never not have goals.
Bart, we just, before we started recording, I was like, dude, just save whatever you're going to say for the podcast, because right now, if you're watching this on video, you have like a pretty epic background. In particular, you got a video, a picture of Step Brothers. You have a bunch of different medals, and I was joking, saying, "Hey, that's your 7th grade basketball trophy." Like, what's up with the background right now? Because it's pretty random, and I like it.
So, like, I feel like my dream office has always been like super inspired by those scenes in the movies where like the grandkid visits their grandpa and then they're like, "What's that, grandpa?" And then they explain all these stories, and they're like, "Oh, that's when I invaded this country and I murdered 20 people, but also where I met grandma." So I always wanted like a collection of stories so that both my kid and all his friends and his cousins, when they come over, it's just the conversation starters. It's a collection of all the stuff that I like.
Dude, I've never heard
I can
anybody
walk you through.
Yeah, I've never heard anybody explain it like that before. But now that you just said that, when I look at like the stuff that I have in my office, I mean, I feel kind of the same. So what's up with Step Brothers then? Is that just to like start a conversation about a funny movie you like? Or did you go out on a date? Like, is that how you met Gia? Like, tell me.
So Step Brothers is one of my top 5 favorite movies of all time. And I feel like it captures the essence of me, where I turned 40 this year, but inside I still feel like a kid, like, And then so like, even as like going through life and business and you pick up a mortgage and you pick up ways to deduct taxes, there's all this adulting that happens. But inside I feel like I just want to play. Like I just want to do karate in the basement,
Dude, I love that, man.
Dude, and your kid's super lucky to have that. That's kind of one of the things that I've tried to lean into the most being a dad, is just tapping back into the things that I enjoyed as a kid, right? Like getting a Pokemon card collection going again to hand off to him, like talking about it and all this stuff. Like it's been so fun to have an excuse to like, I can't wait until I can buy Lego sets again. Not for him, but honestly for me. But yeah, man, I love that. And I think it makes for, I remember my childhood, like some of the best memories I have with my dad was when he was, being a kid and we were riding bikes together and whatnot. So I love that approach, man. I love that approach, and something that I try and live with our kids who are, pretty young. We have a 22-month-old and a 5-month-old.
At this point, I think you say 2-year-old at this point.
I think so. Close. Yeah, it's coming up pretty close. Yeah.
But dude, so tell me about something else back there. So I see Step Brothers. I see a bunch of like little medals and trophies. I also see a black and white kind of like sports picture. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, but tell me, what's your favorite thing in your background? And then obviously we'll get into a bunch of conversation I really have been wanting to have with you. You and I, we've known each other for a long time. We've broken bread together, enjoyed meals and filmed a bunch of stuff together. But I have a lot that I want to talk to you about, but I think this background is just like, we got to talk about what's your favorite thing? What's one thing you could show your son that like you really want to talk about?
It's hard. I have to share 3 things real quick, maybe.
Okay.
I'm just picking a random number, but it's more of the collection of what it is to show, like, I guess, a variety. But like, just real quick on that side, there's an old school TV. So I show my son, that's the type of TV we grew up on. So I think that's like,
has that got a built-in VHS player?
Yes.
Oh my God.
And one of my favorite movies of all time.
Bloodsport.
So good.
Yes.
So
Jean-Claude Van Damme, huh?
Yep. And we literally watch this every night, and we have all these lines that we quote now every day, and it drives the mom nuts, which is awesome.
Oh.
God,
Like literally we'll be working out in the backyard and he'll be like, you break my record, I break you. And we just constantly say random lines throughout the whole day. And you just see the mom rolling her eyes like, oh my God, what has happened? What has happened to our child?
Dude, that's awesome. All right, so that's one. What are the other two?
So that's one. That black and white picture back there, that's actually, it was like, I did Kung Fu as a kid, martial arts. And that was like all the black belts of that class. And so I was a kid there, you know, and like the non-tested martial arts, you can get a black belt as a kid, even though it's still an accomplishment. It takes like 5-6 years of training every single day. So in the front row, it's me and maybe like 5 other people that are under 18. Everyone else is grown-ups. So I'm pretty much, I like that picture. And I have like a couple of trophies of when I was a kid to kind of like show like my kid, like, if you want to achieve something high, you really have to put in the work. Because I would tell him, like, my mom, since we didn't have daycare, my mom would literally drop me off at Kung Fu, and I would train 2 hours a day from 3 to 5 to get the black belt. So even though it's not like jiu-jitsu or like Muay Thai, but it's still something you have to work at. And I think I'm very inspired from the movies that I watched, and I just wanted to be the person that I saw in the movies. So that was like a cool picture to have. Where it's like a class of black belts and there's like maybe 40 people in there and there's under 10 people that are kids.
I love that. Okay.
There's that.
Give us the grand finale. Is that is that your UCLA diploma back there?
No, I actually lost it. But this one my wife got for me, and it was my honorable discharge from the Marine Corps.
Okay.
And so she got it for me as a present. Like, I feel like I'm not a big person on like accolades and stuff. So a lot of the stuff I have, I just grab and I just throw in storage, not thinking that it means anything, you know, especially when you're like mid-20s, like early 30s, you're just like hustling. So it's almost like whatever you do, you just put the past behind you. And then it was my wife was like, hey, you should like celebrate some of this stuff. So she made that for me. And I was like, oh, thank you so much. Like, it became like more memorialized versus just a wrinkled piece of paper. And then, so that made me want to dig out my old powerlifting medals. And then when I started pulling those things out, things that didn't really mean much to me, because like in powerlifting, it doesn't really matter what you place. It matters what you total. So you could win first place, but if you know you didn't do your best, you're like, man, I had such a bad meet, you know? But then when I start pulling these things out, my kid is like, whoa, you got so many medals. And I'm like, oh, shoot, like what didn't matter to me meant so much to someone else. And then that kind of became like a, you know, kind of like a conversation piece, even with my kid. And he wants to do more matches, more jiu-jitsu matches. He wants to lift, he wants to swim. And now like it inspires him. So I'm like, oh shit, like I should dig out more stuff and just kind of put it all over the place. So I could have these cool conversations with my kid.
Dude, a lot of those things, Bart, are, you know, recognition of things you've done in the past. And I agree with you. Like, I think it's so cool to be able to tell those stories. But one of the things that we talk about a lot, and I'm curious your take, you know, how important is it? Because I think a lot of men maybe like fizzle out, or like they always talk about the past as like the glory days. Like, how important is it to continue to find accomplishments that you can show your kids, and for it to be something in the present and in the future, not just something that's like, hey, these were all my accomplishments back in the heyday?
I think it's actually more important, to be honest. I think like living it is way more impactful than preaching it. Like the place that we do jiu-jitsu at right now. So I'm starting off as a complete beginner. I'm a white belt. So yeah, there's like some accomplishments behind me. But the fact that me and my kid go to the same jiu-jitsu place, and if his class ends like 5 minutes early and he comes over and watches the adult class and he sees his dad getting choked out, but he's still trying, I think in his mind, he's like, okay, cool, we're doing this together, and he's putting in work. And it's not all these like back in my day type stories, you know? So he sees me, like my kid loves working out, and I've never told him to work out. And I just think him seeing me work out in the morning makes him want to run to our home gym every morning and just jump in with me. And that's like so much more impactful than saying, hey, did you know your dad used to deadlift 600 pounds, but I can't anymore. I only do 315 now. You know, I think it's like so much more impactful to see me doing it in front of him every day and living and breathing it.
And Teka, is he's 6 or 7, your son?
He just turned 7.
He just turned 7, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And okay, I was just curious about that because I look at the accolades behind you, and some of that it's really interesting for me. This morning I was talking to Kate, and he was power cleaning this morning, and I showed him a quick video of me power cleaning from like the CrossFit Games. I was trying to show him an early arm pull and what that was. I was like, look, bro, you're early arm pulling, and this is an example. I was using a video of me explaining like from a technical perspective. And it is kind of cool to reminisce and look back, and there were some cool moments. But I think to your point, nothing is more powerful than actually showing it in real life. And I think that you guys doing jiu-jitsu together is super powerful because it's hard to show our children hard work. It is, especially when you're talking about things like like a super successful YouTuber or Barbell Brigade and all these things you've done. It's hard to show hard work in those arenas. But it's easier when you're actually just like out there in the garage, in the gym, on the mats, sweating, training. It's like a visual representation of hard work that carries over in other things. So yeah, man, I'm all about it, dude. I'm on the same train as you, Bart.
Yeah, I see it. I see all your content all the time. You're training both of your kids. Even when I visited you at your house, your daughter was like doing cold plunges, and I'm like, holy shit, she's just doing that on her own. That's awesome.
Yeah, Ava's a total badass. She's a lot better at the cold plunge than Jason is.
Oh, dude, a lot better. Dude, I want to talk about something that I think is like really, 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 really powerful. So, you and Gio, you guys started Barbell Brigade many years ago. And for people who are unfamiliar with Barbell Brigade, it's a brick and mortar location, but it also became like a clothing and supplement phenomenon, right? Really, really successful. Basically, cut and sew, new drops every month. I mean, for about a decade, right, Bart? If I'm not mistaken, about a decade.
Yeah, about a decade. 11 years, I think, total.
Yeah, 11 years. But it started off in this brick and mortar, and I think there's so much to unpack here, right? Because you and your wife build a business, and then there's different seasons. And so I guess a great place to start this conversation is how have you navigated the seasons of your life? Because I think a lot of people can relate to this, like myself in particular. I really related to when you guys chose to shut down Barbell Brigade, the clothing side, and keep the brick and mortar. That was a very difficult conversation, I'm sure, difficult decision. But the way you described it in the videos and even talking to you, I know I was texting with you, is that like, dude, you have seasons, and it starts off, you and Gio just trying to build something. And then all of a sudden you have your son, and like priorities shift, and that's okay. It's actually a good thing. So I was wondering if you could kind of talk us through that for people who are maybe in a similar situation where they feel like they're holding on to something because it's like what's comfortable and what's normal, but sometimes seasons need to change.
Yeah. So me and Gio, we started Barbell Brigade back in 2013. And this is already kind of maybe like our second main business venture together. We started off with Just Kidding Films, Just Kidding News, which is like a whole comedy channel type of stuff. And then I started doing a fitness channel. And through the fitness channel, I felt like, I need some sort of like competition to drive me. So I always felt like I was pretty strong in the gym. So I just Googled like lifting competition, not knowing that powerlifting even existed. And this thing called powerlifting came up. And it said squat, bench, deadlift. And I was like, well, I bench and deadlift. I don't really squat. I'll figure it out. I did my first competition. It was down in Camp Pendleton. I was hooked. I loved it. This is back in 2012. There was no real powerlifting gym yet. So I was like, you know what? And there wasn't really that many CrossFit boxes even in LA. If there was, I probably would have just powerlifted there. But I texted a bunch of my buddies. We had our studio for Just Kidding Films. And I'm like, hey, if I bought a container, I stocked it full of equipment, how many of you guys would be down? I'll just put like a little combo lock on it, and we can all have access to the combo, and it'll be 24 hours. And you can just pop in, use the equipment, put it away whenever you guys are done. And just through text, I had about like 30 friends that are like, I'm in. And I'm like, holy shit, this is moving pretty fast. So I was like, I wonder if this could be a brick and mortar. Went to Barnes & Noble, got my first like business plan book because I knew nothing about brick and mortar businesses. I only knew.
You got it at Barnes & Noble?
At Barnes & Noble, yeah.
Dude, business plan for dummies.
Yeah, something like that. We looked at a bunch of them, and there was one where at the end of every chapter, there's a worksheet.
Yeah.
So when you're done with that worksheet, like let's say there's like 12 chapters, you rip each chapter out and you staple it all together, and you have like your 12-step business plan. So I was like, okay, this works for me. let's do this. And we pretty much spent about an hour every day whilst doing the other hustle, going through it. And it walks you through going to City Hall, getting permits, all that stuff. And October 2013, our first gym opened. And, you know, when you're like early, mid-20s and you have a passion, you'll live and die by that passion, you know? So like at that time, I thought I had staffing covered, which we didn't. So there's many nights or many days where I would close the gym myself, mop it. I get home at 12, shower, get in bed by 1, and I have to wake up at 4 to open the gym back up at 5. So we had some of those crazy days. I definitely know what the hustle feels like. And then we started launching apparel to kind of get more funding because we wanted the business to run itself. I didn't want to kind of use one business to subsidize the other one, to start expanding and buying equipment. And so what ends up being like, this is my relationship. And then I think everyone has a similar amount of bandwidth where if this is my relationship, this is this passion 1, passion 2, passion 3, personal time, it ends up becoming where like what is actually the most important gets pushed way into the back because you're so focused on like tangible problems, you know, like, oh, are we meeting this month's revenue goals or whatever? So we had like a really, really good run. And up until I would say like 2015, 2016 is when we first had the first inkling of we are redlining our life right now. And if we want to bring a kid into this world, there is no way with our bandwidth, like stretched to the max, we're going to be able to bring in another kid, which is technically another business, or a business is another kid. It's like, that's how much, you know, time and effort that it takes, that we started to slowly plan on winding it down. We didn't know that we were going to close. We just knew we need to start bringing on staff, start delegating something. We need to bring down the bandwidth. And over the years, the goal was to get Gio, my wife, her dream is to be a stay-at-home mom. So we've slowly taken steps towards that. First, we bring on like a CFO type. They can run the numbers, then bring on a project manager type, then bring on pretty much like things we're not good at, we outsource, and then we hold on to the things that are our strengths. And eventually, this year, just a few months ago, was when we decided, you know what? It's like business is one of those things where they'll never not have problems and they'll never not have goals. So if you don't say, I'm going to call it quits, it'll be a never-ending battle. And then forever, your family, your relationship, all that stuff will always just be kind of like an afterthought. And so this year we made the really difficult decision to shut it all down, to focus on family. And I would say like this has been probably the most fulfilling part of this decade, actually, is being able to build all that, having our kids see all that, which is really cool. Like he'll come into our gym and he's like, wow, Papa, this is ours. I'm like, well, it's mine. I was like, we built it. You get to train here. And yes, you are my son. But me and Mama built this together. But it was cool to finally be able to wind all that stuff down and focus a lot more on family, which is super like fulfilling, you know?
Bart, was there ever a part of you that considered or I mean, I'm sure this was part of the question. So part of the conversation, so just walk me through it, of like taking a like full step back, but still letting it be a thing, whether that someone else takes it over, but you kind of just completely taking a step back. And the reason I ask is I know that, you know, I've never been an entrepreneur myself, but I'm sure Jason can relate to this. There's a part of like, it's your baby, like you grew it, like it's almost like the right decision to just like, hey, if this isn't going to be something that I have my hands on, I'm just going to shut it down. But how did you balance that with like, hey, this thing is special. There's people that love it and it does serve people. Like, was it ever a consideration to like, let it still grow, but just you not be involved?
So I would say like very transparently speaking, my strengths are creatives. So my strengths aren't business. So I would say if we were to have someone step in and take like the CEO or even like a COO type role, we would not only need that role, but we would need some sort of big cash injection to kind of fuel some of the initiatives that person would want. So because of that, we considered trying to make a sale back in 2020. And we've had some really, really close talks. We worked with like a private equity firm that was in health and fitness that was willing. And then we had another talk with one of the billionaire social media brands now. I can't really say who because I've signed an NDA, but just if you think of the new social media brands that have a $1 billion evaluation, one of them was very, very interested. We had really deep talks. And after 4 years of constantly pitching, and doing due diligence and almost closing, that's when we realized like this can be never ending. So we have to go, okay, on the last one, it was literally in April. We're like, okay, they just filed another extension. If this doesn't close by May, then we have to make plans to shut down in July. So that's what we ended up doing. I think in a perfect world, now knowing what I know, I think I should have brought on someone as strong as business sooner as I was in creatives, because it was so driven by creatives that it was like one of those things where if you kind of like ripped one Band-Aid of business off, all the blood's just gonna start pouring out. Everything's just patched by creative Band-Aids all over the place. So yeah, we not only needed a really good CEO or COO, but a giant cash injection so they can like revamp the whole thing.
Yeah. No, can relate to one last question on this topic, Jay, and then I'll hand it off to you.
Yeah.
What lessons can you pinpoint specifically to like all of this process? Because it sounds like, you've had some really big boy conversations for going back to what you were saying before of like, adulting and like, mortgage, taxes. Like not only have you gone through those things, like you've had to do a lot of growing for some of the just conversations that you've talked about. Like what specific lessons have you learned through that journey that now, even though you're not in that world per se anymore, you're able to bring into things like family and being a dad?
I think the biggest lesson I learned is you could literally do anything you want to. So when I was a kid, I grew up like very traditional Asian American, where your parents are like, you got to be a doctor or engineer, like, one of those like defined paths. And when I graduated college and I was going to do the whole social media thing, I don't know what was going on. But I think, that whole phrase, like, if there's a will, there's a way, you'll figure it out. And I never ran a business. I don't have a business degree. I don't know anything about business, but you just kind of go one foot in front of the other, and then you learn all the lessons as you go. Kind of even like the way, like I like to draw a similar parallel to jiu-jitsu. Like you don't learn black belt stuff to become a white belt or get your next stripe on white belt. You get your ass kicked and then you go, okay, cool. Now I know not to do. You have to get armbarred to know how to defend the armbar, right? Like you can't go, let me learn everything. Let me watch all these tutorials and then I'll just jump in first day and get all 4 stripes at the same. It doesn't work that way. You get your ass kicked and then you learn. So having done all of that, I just realized everything you have to do, you just got to get your ass kicked. So even being a dad now, that's like the same thing I'd explain to my kid. I'm like, if you want to swim, you're probably going to swallow some water like the first 10 minutes, but that you're going to swallow water and everything you want to do, race car driving, everything, and that's how you learn. And that's the biggest lesson I learned, where before I would be like, you're so avoid of those first ass kicking lessons that makes you not want to do anything. It's like, oh, what if they boo me on stage? I don't want to do stand-up. Well, it's like, guess what? Your first 10 times, everyone's going to boo you. So if you want to do stand-up, you got to get booed,
Dude, I love that. I was like sitting here in my head. I'm like, say it louder from the back or whatever. Like you got to go through those. Like you got to go through those arm bars, those losses, you have to. And man, it's difficult in the moment, right? Like I've had a lot of, ups and downs in business, just like, many people, and in life, we've had a lot of ups and downs. But it's the downs that you could really learn from. And it sucks in the moment, right? But that's really the only way. Like, because you brought it up, I might as well ask, you've been booed. Like, have you been doing stand-up comedy and legitimately, like, do you have people like literally booing at you?
So I got lucky where I did maybe like 3 to 4 years of like comedy online before I started doing stand-up. So that's probably like the wrestler that tries jiu-jitsu, right? Like he kind of has a head start. But in the beginning, you're just trying to do any show. And I would say one of the worst shows I've ever done, it was a bar that they converted into a like stand-up comedy venue for that night. And I remember coming in, everyone's all drunk, and there's probably 12 people there. And for stand-up, that's the worst. Having zero, it's almost better.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It's almost better to get booed by like 500 people than to have 12 people and you can hear like chairs scooting out. You can hear like the ice cubes in people's cup, and you're just like, dude, what am I doing here? You're trying to make these jokes land, and you're like, oh, like you just don't even have you don't even have feedback, you know? And that was like hands down probably like the worst. And because you don't even know if you did good or bad, it's just a horrible time. But you have to do that so much too, just to get the callus, you know, and the thick skin to keep going. And then if you can do a place like that, you can handle anything.
So how many shows have you, I mean, you know, you have your Just Kidding News, which I do want to talk about like the personalities involved in that, because you guys started that years ago and it's grown, and comedy I think has really changed over the years. Definitely a talking point I'd love to discuss. But like when it comes to stand-up comedy, I can't think, you know, I think coaching like a class, I think teaches you a lot about like commanding a room and blah, blah, blah. But I think stand-up comedy, man, I mean, you talk about pressure, you talk about performance, you talk about a hard crowd. I mean, what are some things that you've learned through that experience? Because how many times have you done stand-up comedy? Like a lot, or kind of a lot?
I would say maybe like 50 times. I don't know.
50 times.
50 to 100. Yeah, 50 to 100 maybe. So I would say like what the main thing that you learn is kind of like every other discipline. It feels like chaos until you find the form. So in the beginning, you know, you're like, you just say like random stories. You're not really tight with your words, and you hear a little chuckle here. And then eventually you kind of find it where it's like, oh, like these 3 words, when I put it together and I hit it with this pause and then I hit the punchline, boom, it clicks. And it feels like almost stand-up comedy, jiu-jitsu, all the things I've ever gotten into, it feels very similar, where everything feels muddy until you have that 1, 2, 3. Oh, like grab the arm, leg over the head. Oh, I feel it. And you can literally feel that in stand-up, where you can feel like almost as you're setting it up, you feel the audience go, oh, here it comes. And then punchline, and then it actually hits, and it sounds like someone hit like a bell, like ding, like it's a perfect on-key note. That's what it feels like. But in the beginning, it's just like any other endeavor. You know, it's just like, oh, what's this mess I'm in? What's going on? Yeah.
You know, one of the things that I think a lot of people lack, and it's difficult, like I can relate to this, is getting over that hump though, right? Like getting over the hump of how, you know, the phase where everything's muddy and you're like, how am I ever going to do this? What do you think has helped you get past that and like stick to it once you've committed? Do you think that's just something that you're born with per se? Your parents instilled that on you? Like, what do you think that is? And how can people that may be listening and it's like, yeah, I did try that thing, I was in that muddy phase and I was like, oh, not for me, can help get them through that?
So I would say I have to thank my mom for this, because I actually learned this at a very, very early age. So it's easier for me to kind of like check my ego later into adulthood. So that picture, that Kung Fu picture, I was a brown belt, and I remember going to Taiwan for the summer. And, you know, when you're a kid, like you're a fish. You remember one thing one day, and the next day you don't remember anything. I come back 2 months later, I go back to Kung Fu class, and I'm like crying at home because I'm like 10. Mom, I don't want to go back to Kung Fu. I forgot everything. I don't know how to do anything. And my mom pushed me, like, you have to. And she finally like negotiated with me. She goes, how about this? You go back, don't even wear your belt. You're a white belt. We'll have you line up with the white belts. No pressure. As the things start coming back, you start wearing the belt that you feel comfortable with. She's talked it over with my coach too. And then my coach was cool with that too. And then so slowly, what I thought was going to be like, oh man, I have to re-earn my brown belt again. It came back literally within like a week or two. You know, it just all started coming back. Oh yeah, I'm supposed to do this, do this, do this. And then so I think once you've kind of like quote unquote mastered one thing, you understand that you can apply that to everything else. The sad part is a lot of adults, they didn't have someone like pushing them all the way to the end. So they have to learn how to master the ego later on. And I think that's the tough part. So I would say if you're an adult and you haven't had like that gold medal finish in that one thing that you spent 5-10 years like working hard on, I would say don't try to master 10 things. Just master one thing. Like if you know how to play the keyboard really well, you're going to pick up guitar like that. But if you're trying to learn keyboard and know how to sing and play guitar, oh boy, it's going to be so hard because you don't have those like gems that you learn from completing something that you can apply to other things yet. Yeah, but once you master one thing, you kind of see like the skeleton for the other things, and it's easier.
That's a really interesting take on that, right? Like, I mean, so for example, I spent a long time improving my skill in CrossFit. And then what I'm really doing, in addition to obviously all the fitness skills, but like to your point, it's like you're learning how to learn, right? And you're learning how to learn. Yes. You're learning how to learn not just to like a certain level, right? But you're learning how to learn to a higher level, right? It'd be like people never getting exposed to like college, for example, or whatever, name the school. There's a certain skill set that's required at the higher level to break through and accomplish the task than there is at a moderate level, right? And I think that's what you're alluding to. And I've tried to take that same like learning how to learn mentality into jiu-jitsu for me. And then I took that same mentality into tactical games training, which has been really, really fun. That's cool. And dude, by the way, shout out to your mom. I know you just went and saw her in Taiwan, didn't you?
Yeah. My little cousin, who was like all tiny, is now like a grown woman, and she got married. Oh. So it was kind of like a good excuse for a nice little family reunion. So I saw my mom there. I saw my uncle, I haven't seen in many years. It was really cool.
Yeah, man. But I mean, shout out to her for like, and I think this is a fine line and something we could definitely talk about. And I know Gabe and I have spoke about this, but it's like pushing, but try not to push too hard. Yeah. And I think that this mentality is really interesting because like what I'm gathering from it is that she wanted you back in the game, but she heard and she listened to you and she tried to find a way to make it like an appropriate on-ramping, which is pretty cool. I appreciate you sharing that story, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. My mom is hands-on. So that is like probably the biggest lesson that not only I feel like that I learned, but I could also pass on to my kid. Like if she feels like I have difficulty, she'll get in the trenches with me. So for example, I had trouble memorizing a form, and this like little Asian lady would take me to the park, and we're both like in horse stance, like, like practicing, punching, doing the form. And she goes, this is what I remember from watching your guys' class. Like after this open block, you have to do this block, and she's like two people doing it. And her really doing it side by side with me made it felt like we were in it together. And so that like really helped kind of frame it in my mind. If my kid ever needs help, it's easier to do it side by side, like shoulder to shoulder, versus trying to like pull them. Like, yeah, you could keep doing it. You could keep doing it, So like anytime my kid is like, oh, the pool's too cold. As soon as I jump in and he's like, oh shit, if dad could do it, I could do it too. Yeah. That's like the biggest lesson I learned.
Dude.
I love all that, man. We talked to Tim Kennedy on the podcast a while back. I love when like different guests that we have say very similar things, because it just like, to me, it just, solidifies the fact that there's something there. Because he was saying how he's never been in hockey, like never been on skates, whatever.
Oh, yeah,
Kid, super into hockey. Guess what he's doing? He's learning how to skate. He's learning how to be out there.
Oh, cool.
He's not just going to, watch the practices. Like he wants to be able to now skate and learn alongside his kids. So exactly what you're saying. And I think that that's what's so valuable. Like Jason mentioned in the beginning of you doing BJJ with your kid, like literally you guys are taking class at the same time. Like he's seeing you go through the same growth, the same struggle. So he's going to be less likely to ever say like, hey dad, like, this is really tough. Like I'm not trying to get, beat up and whatever. Cause he sees you doing it. And you're going back every day. So it doesn't give him that standing to not want to continue to get past, going back to what we were talking about before, get past that hump of, hey, this is really hard because dad's doing it. So I'm going to do it too.
Yeah.
While we're on the subject of your son, I am interested. I didn't know this until recently. You guys created a social media platform on Instagram in particular, and you had the YouTube with the family. And it's something that is like kind of hits home to me personally, and I'm just curious your thoughts on it. What role do you think social media will play in your son's future? Because right now, when I'm looking at it, he's got a large following on Instagram. What for you and Gio? Like, what is the mindset there? Why build that? And what are the pros? What are the cons? Like, and I'm really genuinely curious. Like, what kind of conversations are going on in your house to say, hey, let's help. Let's help build a personal brand. Let's you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I'm fascinated by this.
To be honest, we're figuring it out too. We actually don't know. Yeah. Originally, like we were of the Instagram and social media generation where it's more about documentation. Now people have like, this is my very curated page or very branded page. This is my digital storefront, if you will. So we kind of have the old school mindset. And so when we created his Instagram, it was just a place to have like a digital photo album and we could send to family members. So if they want, they can kind of see his progression, month by month, year by year. And even with our family vlog channel, it started off with just like personal vlogs, like, hey, this is what we're doing behind the scenes of Just Getting Films, behind the scenes at Barbell Brigade. This is our life. This is the type of dates we like to go on, food we like to eat. And so when he was born, he was just kind of born into the ecosystem. And we're like, the question does come up, do we take him off? What should we do? And we're like, if something very alarming comes up, we'll for sure take him off and like, hide his identity or whatever until he turns 18. So there's that side of it. There's the other side where we realize like in this day and age, not only is there financial wealth, there's also like social wealth too. Like just because someone has like 1 million followers, that can command some sort of either monetary value or they can bring them into networks that this same person who doesn't, like someone could be a technically better lawyer, but because this lawyer has 1 million followers, might get more clients like overnight, So it's like a big like social wealth type of thing. So there is a slight incentive to maintain that. How it plays out when he's 18, I have no idea. So we're kind of just navigating this day by day. And so far, it's been pretty cool where I would say, like the pros of it are when we go out in public, our kid knows that we're like, people know us, like we're quote unquote, like semi-famous or whatever. So he's born into that. So when he sees people across the room have the look, like he'll be like, hey, Papa, I think they want to take a picture with us, and we'll take a picture. Or he'll be like, let's say we go somewhere and eat, someone from across the room, like pays for our dinner. And like, man, our life is pretty good. People like to pay for our stuff.
Yeah.
And so there's definitely that. And then, so I think for every one of those perks, we always try to use that also as like a learning opportunity where like, it's because we had to contribute this kind of value to impact people's lives in that way. So like let's say there's a time where we might have like a small family argument. Someone wants to take a picture. I never say no to pictures. I go, oh, okay, cool. Let's take a picture. Try to have a conversation. And then I'll use that and go, see, this is why you need to keep a positive attitude. As kids, it's easy to have tantrums and stuff. But this is the reason why you have to keep a positive attitude. Because imagine if I don't use the word dick, but I was like, imagine if your dad was a dick all the time. Do you think people would enjoy and continue to want to be nice to them? Like your positivity goes back and forth, So I try to use every single thing as some sort of like learning lesson. Because I also feel like because he's born into our online ecosystem, it's one of those things where like you don't choose to be born into Michael Jackson's family. You just are born in there. And now you kind of have to adapt into it. Like I'm sure with your kids, they didn't choose whether or not their dad's going to be a CrossFit champion, but now they are. And so how do you navigate that? Like you can completely shield them away from it. You can isolate or you can embrace it. And I think we kind of chose to embrace it. And then we'll just have a lot more conversations and a lot of debriefings as things come up.
I like the approach part because I think there's an inevitability to like life getting more and more digital. And
oh yeah,
there's just like you said, there's value, there's a skill set to be learned, but having said that, it is an impossible balance because whether this is true or not, like you're constantly fed the dangers or the cons of this kind of stuff, right? And like some of that is very valid. Some might be a little overplayed. So as a parent, I know that it is difficult to recognize that, hey, the world is moving to a more digital place. These, having a presence in these platforms, knowing how to navigate them, knowing how to, whatever you want to call it, build their personal brand is incredibly valuable. But on the other side, there are all these pitfalls, it becoming you're very attached to your ego, so on and so forth. So I think it's a tough balance, man. But I think one thing that you guys have going for you is that not hopefully, I know you've learned a lot of lessons because you've been in it and you can pass those along, right? It's not just someone that hasn't been in the space and now has a kid that wants to be completely in it. Like you hopefully have the knowledge, have the cheat codes and know what some of the pitfalls are. So you can be a little bit more proactive about them, which I think is great.
Yeah, you know how to navigate them, Bart. Like one of the things I was thinking of as Gabe's talking is like, for me, I've had to learn how to navigate this world, right? Whether it's podcasts, YouTube, Instagram, we've learned how to navigate it where you can't make it all about your self-worth with a number because follower number is not who you are. But you would only know that if you've experienced that growth and you've had to learn to overcome that, right? Where maybe at one point you did associate your self-worth with a number and you had to learn that that wasn't the case. But if, for example, if you're someone listening and your child is interested in this, but you've never experienced that, you need to go educate yourself on it because you don't want your child to get their self-worth from growth on a number or from whatever it is, because it's a very slippery slope. And so, I think for me at least, my wife and I, Ash and I have kind of positioned it as like, we just don't do it. They don't really show up too much in anything. That being said, it is something that's kind of like on my mind a little bit based on what you just said too. I think that you have a really good vantage point on that. Like, you're right. Like, for example, if your child goes and wants to go play sports, them having a social background is going to help them get more money in the future, right? Or them, or some of these people might be able to build their own YouTube channel that could create wealth. And so I don't want to stifle that, but at the same time, I want to manage it. And I also think it's a little bit different from boys and girls, but that's a whole different thing that might get me into some trouble. But that's the way I feel. The way I feel is that it's a little bit different, at least for me, to pursue that maybe with my son than it is for my daughter, just because the interest that they have and how those are marketable online. I don't want it to just be about the way you look and the way you dress. I want to maybe there be a more tangible, like actionable thing. So maybe sports is the way to go. Anyways.
I went to a Laker game recently. And I mean, if we're honest, LeBron James' kid, Bronny, he sucks ass at basketball. But because his dad, LeBron, is such a legend, the minute he steps on court,
place goes wild.
Goes wild. It was as if like Michael Jordan stepped on the court or something, And then every shot he shoots, and he probably missed like 10 of them, 10 of his first shots. Everyone's like, oh, And I'm like, he might suck, but because of his like clout leverage, I'm sure his contract is better than anyone else with his same stats. So there's definitely value there, But also at the same time, I think having someone like LeBron be in his corner, I'm sure he's constantly reminded, like, what you have now is what I've given to you. From this point on, you got to earn your own. So I think that's something that I also constantly teach with my kids. So like, kind of like I heard that like Shaquille O'Neal interview a long time ago where he tells his kids, he goes, "We're not rich, I'm rich." And so like all the stuff that my kid sees, like he'll see like our YouTube plaques or whatever. He goes, "Oh, we got a YouTube plaque." I'm like, "No, your dad has one. Your mom has one. You don't have one," So that he always knows that I have to earn everything. Like even with dessert, like he'll be like, "Can I have ice cream?" I'm like, "Did you earn it? Because I want you to eat like a handful of protein, palm-sized protein. And you can have whatever dessert you want." He goes, "Oh man, all right." And then he'll eat like, so he has like more protein in his food.
Yeah. Even like what you just said about LeBron and about Bronny, I don't keep up with basketball. I don't keep up with basketball too much, but the general consensus, by the way, the fact that this guy, LeBron, could be in the league for like 21 years, come in at such a young age and really never get wrapped up in anything major, like
no
just
drama,
goes to show like, bro, he's a You could like him, you could hate him, whatever. But dude, the guy has been consistent for 20 plus years. And now to be able to go play with his son, that's badass. Like that would be really cool for me to experience. Obviously, I'm not in the NBA, blah, blah, blah. Anyways. But the reason why I bring this up is like, it does talk about this idea of comedy and how comedy has changed. So when you first got into comedy, you know, I was listening to you talk about this with Matt Boudreau, I think, or maybe somebody else was talking about like old school, dude. You'd go out, you'd film on like a VHS type thing, and you'd have to edit it to make it into digital. So you've been doing content since, you know, 2010, 2012, whatever it is, when YouTube was really just starting to grow. My question for you is like, when you guys start Just Kidding News, and there's like, how many of you guys are a part of it? 4 or 5?
There's 6 of us total.
Six of you. Okay.
Yeah.
So you got 6 personalities. You got, you know, growth through YouTube and digitally, et cetera. But how has comedy changed, in your opinion, about, you know, someone and not being able to, like, everybody just getting offended over anything you say? Or do you feel like you guys have just navigated that where like, dude, you are who you are, and anybody who watches it just gets it and you don't have to worry about that?
I would say there's definitely like a comedic climate. And I also think there is your relationship with your audience, and it's a little bit different. Comedic climate wise, I do think it's a little bit more, not a little bit, it's way more sensitive than before. Whereas before, I think people understood that, I think people take it really literally now. People understood before that comedy it's a improvisational jazz with words. You know, sometimes, you know, this guy's just jamming out and he'll say some stuff. It's on key. Boom. Sounds great. Sometimes it's off key. Ooh, doesn't sound good. You don't say the musician sucks or I hope your life is over. You just go, oh, bad night, you know? And that's kind of how like comedy and jazz has a lot of parallels. And so you kind of always viewed it as, okay, cool, improvisational jazz with words. Now it's, I think probably because of the digital age where every single thing is recorded. So it feels like it's cemented in history. Now it's like someone says something and they're not even allowed to backtrack, or their intentions aren't allowed to be discovered. It's however you perceive it. That's the judgment I have on your intentions. You meant to offend me when you said that. So that part is weird. On the same token, I would say the pros of it is with the onset of the digital age, comedians have a direct relationship with their audience now. Whereas before, you have to build your audience through going to Laugh Factory, the Improv, like you have to go through the Comedy Store, you have to go to specific places. Now you have your own audience. So even if we were ever to do anything horrendous and we get canceled, there's always going to be that core audience that'll ride with us because they truly believe who we are. And every comedian has that. You know, Joe Rogan, Andrew Schultz, whoever, everyone's going to have their core audience that they build that relationship with digitally. And that's the one really cool part about the digital age of comedy. I do wish, though, that people can go back to that mindset of understanding comedy is jazz. So everybody's improvising, and they improvise for a long period of time until they create that perfect bit that they'll now use in their next YouTube or Netflix special, and not be so sensitive about it, you know? Because it's almost like, if I use jiu-jitsu as an analogy, it's almost as judging someone's practice rolls and going, oh, see, you're not the GOAT. I saw that purple belt tap you out. And it's like, dude, I was trying something, you know?
Yeah. Or like, I mean, I'm not in the BJJ space. Or another analogy is
not yet. Not yet.
It's inevitable. But you know, like you're doing jiu-jitsu, you're rolling, like it's understood that you're practicing this sport to all of a sudden like attribute intention of like, you're trying to hurt me when it's not there is similar to how like ludicrous it seems sometimes of taking a bit and saying, oh, you were trying to offend a group of people. So.
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah, like in jiu-jitsu, you're trying to win. Sometimes you win by hurting, but you're not trying. I'm not like the person arm barring wants the other person to tap, not for his ligaments to snap off.
Yeah. And in comedy, dude, you're just trying to invoke an emotion. You're trying to get some laughs. Like, I do think it's tough, man. It's tough. It would be I haven't been to the Joe Rogan laugh, his new, what is it called?
The Mothership.
Yeah. But I'm in Austin actually next week. Maybe I'll go at night. I'm really curious about it because like I think that you got to go into those places, and I imagine in person, it's like you're going in there with like, hey, dude, guards down, like just let it ride. Let's have some fun. Yeah, it might be a little weird, but like let's have fun. Whereas online, dude, there's just no context, and people take clips and they consolidate them, and and you're seeing this even now with like headlines. It's getting really bad, but I do think people are wising up to it. Gabe and I talked about this the other day. Like, I think people are smartening up to like, the headline isn't always what was actually said. Like.
Not even close now.
Not even close.
Not even like now, like even with election times.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's terrible.
Like the headline, I think they'll just get anybody to read. And then once you read the article, you're like, wait, this has nothing to do with how you pitched it. It's insane.
The article will literally say that the headline isn't true. Like they do those headlines a lot of like asking a question, because then people will assume that the answer is one thing, but then you read the article and it's like, oh, so it's not true. It's
dude,
it's crazy.
Bart, like when you guys decided, what was the reason to move to Vegas, and like what was that process like? Kind of leaving your community, and what kind of lessons, I guess, are you trying to instill? Like, how do you treat Gio in terms of like in front of your son? Let's start with why did you guys move to Vegas? And then I have a bunch of other stuff I want to talk about. Like, aside from the fact you got a baller ass house.
Thank you. With the cool background. What happened was, growing up in California, it's kind of like in your face all the time that housing prices are insane. And we're really fortunate where we got into like an industry and we did decent enough where we had a lot of options in California. But still, while in California, if you ever like just surf Zillow in any other state, every other state looks like everything's on sale. It just looks crazy. So I would say like in 2016, 2017 is when we first just goof around as a group. Not just me and Gio, but like everyone else in our company. Like, what would happen if we moved to Vegas? And we would look at these homes, and I'm like, dude, I could live like 50 Cent for like 500 grand. Like a 500 grand house would make me live like 50 Cent. And so we just messed around and then didn't take it seriously because we're born and raised in LA. You're probably going to stay here forever. That's our thought process. COVID comes around, and all of LA gets shut down. And so our brick and mortar gets shut down, which makes sense because I'm like, cool. You guys have like, public safety issues. You got to deal with that. Then the back end of stuff, like where we run like the corporate, the apparel, the supplements, where we literally have like under 20 people in our company. All the desks are faced apart. We did the whole COVID protocol. Every morning, people come in a line outside, COVID test. Okay, cool. You're good. Come in. You come in. You're good. Everyone's wearing a mask. We have those stupid plexiglass things across everyone's desk. We did we try to be as law-abiding as possible. Regardless of how I felt personally about it, I'm like, I don't want anyone in the company to feel uncomfortable. So let's do what the law says. Meanwhile, I see my friends in like Texas, Florida. Everyone has their own rules. No one cares. Everything's wide open. Then our back end non-public facing office gets shut down too, and we have to work remote. I was like, okay, if we have to work remote anyways, I just literally paid rent 3 months in a row on this office that we're not using. And I can't even go to my own gym. Like my own gym is closed. So I'm training in my backyard. And I did find this more rebellious CrossFit box that was open and I would train there. And then even the owner, who was the fire chief of the city, he was like, wait a minute, I think I've seen you on social media before. Don't you own a gym in LA? I was like, I do, but we're closed. And then he's like, well, welcome, come on over. So I was training over there. And that's when I started going, if we have to be online and we can't meet in person anyways, why am I paying rent and mortgage in one of the most expensive places in the country? Like I'm going to try to consider other options. So I was like, oh, I remember us talking about Vegas. So we flew over to Vegas. I'm like, let's check out what it's about. And for me, I'm like one of those guys, like if I dive into something, it's all in. So I got an agent and I checked out, I'm going to check out 20 homes.
Gabe's all fired up because he moved to Texas like in an Airstream. Anyways.
Yeah. So yeah, I was like, okay, I got an agent. I'm going to check out 20 homes. These are the top 3 areas I've heard about. And we did a crash course thing. And then originally what I thought Vegas was just mainly the strip. But the minute you go into the suburbs, you're like, oh shit, there's like a whole other town outside of the town. We fell in love. We saw this house that would probably be like 5 million in LA. It was 1.3 in Vegas. And we're like, dude, this is insane. I'm like, this is crazy. Even my agent in LA, he flew with me because he just wanted to check out a different market. And when he walked in and looked at the pricing sheet, he was like, what? He just walked out immediately. So I was like, F it. We put a down payment. And then I'm like, what's the worst that could happen? We hate it here and we move back in a year. So we bought the house, we stayed there, and then we've been here since. And we've been here for 3 years now, and we love it. Yeah, like me and my wife's mentality is always, we call it raccoon dicking.
Raccoon dicking.
Yeah, raccoon, like that raccoon behind me. I don't know
where's
how
the raccoon? Oh, the raccoon's over. Is that holding a lamp? Oh,
yeah.
Okay, so that looks like a raccoon dick. Is that what you're talking about?
No, that's just a raccoon holding a lamp. But when we first started dating, we were like talking about, I think, food preferences or if we would ever skydive or something like that. And then I think I mentioned that I'm one of those guys that'll try anything once. So if I go in a restaurant and they go, our most exquisite entree is raccoon dicks, I'll be like, let me try it. So I think it became this thing where like, you know what, let's just raccoon dick. It's pretty much like another phrase for YOLO. So we'll always just try it. And if we don't like it, we could always take a couple steps back. And we raccoon dick to Vegas and we've loved it so far.
Dude, that mentality, man, is something that my wife has a lot more than me. And I'm so grateful for it because I'm actually pretty risk averse. But, you know, to your point, and I've learned this through some pretty big decisions we've made. You know, we bought an Airstream. We were like, hey, we're going to live in an Airstream for a year and just kind of figure it out. Ended up being an incredible adventure year. We went all over the States, West Coast, East Coast. It was awesome. That's actually how we ended up in Texas. Similar to you during COVID, man. It was just, you know, we were in California and just getting outside of California and like the breath of fresh air and also just like people being just chill. People being like everyone was so on pins and needles in California.
Yeah, everyone being just normal.
Yeah, like literally, like not reckless, not any like, but just like normal in a time where, you know, we had just left California and it felt like, you know, everyone was on top of each other and it was crazy. So yeah, man, it was a fun adventure, but she's the one that's pushed us to make decisions that like, just like you said, like if we hate the Airstream, we sell it and we're right back where we ended up. If we don't like it here in Texas, we sell it. We can go move back to New York. We can go move back to California. Like those are always options. But I think it's easy to get caught up on the fear of like, well, what if it ends up not working out? Like, what if it doesn't work out? Is it really like, is the worst thing that can happen really that bad? And I think in most cases, that's not really the case.
Dude, I love the term raccoon dick. I mean,
that's Jason's main takeaway.
My main takeaway.
Right after this podcast, I'm like, I got Jason to say raccoon dick.
You know the best part about it is, it's like, I don't know, you and I, we need to go out to dinner sometime and we need to sit down and be like, excuse me, sir, the server. Be like, do you guys serve raccoon dick here? but no, seriously, I like that. I mean, look, I know you guys use that term, but the way I look at it is like, and I think that there's a huge analogy here for you guys going to Vegas, or I think a lot of times, even like with Barbell Brigade and different stuff, like, bro, sometimes you just got to like raccoon it and like just do it. And like, you know, a year or two from now, maybe it didn't work out, but like, at least you don't have that regret. And I think that a lot of people, and I'd probably say that Ash and I are both, I'm probably, I don't know, I'm not overly conservative. I don't know. We're kind of similar, her and I. But I think that there's this idea that like, especially with work, like if you're not, if you change your career path, if you whatever, like, bro, you could do it for a year or two and still go back to what you're doing before. Like it'll be okay, but it's hard. And it's especially hard when you and your spouse are on different pages. So coming together, like, what was that like? So with you and Gio, like you got the business, you got the family, you got, you know, and I know that, you know, adversity is always around, right? There, it's not if, it's when adversity strikes for a variety of reasons, right? With family, with business. What kind of things do you guys do to like be raccoon dick ready? You know what I'm saying? Like, what do you do?
I never heard that term before. That's a cool term.
Oh my God.
Raccoon dick ready. That's so funny.
I just coined it because we call, we have this thing. we have this thing called like bulkhead ready. So
we don't. You do.
I do. Where anytime I fly on Southwest, I try and or anywhere, I try and get the bulkhead, in particular Southwest, because I'm trying to be bulkhead ready. Where like seatbelts off. If someone's going to try and go after that the cockpit, like I'm bulkhead ready, bro. Like I don't. This is the wrong. I'm the guy who's trying to do that thing. I'm going to do everything in my power to be bulkhead ready, physically fit, capable, set. It makes his life a lot harder. So what does it mean to be raccoon dick ready? Like, how do you guys have a relationship? How do you guys have a relationship enough to be able to make those tough decisions? I guess is the better way of describing it.
I think for us, we really prioritize, and like every lesson that you ever learn, you have to go through some tough times to get there. But we've always prioritized our relationship over everything else. So it's easy as you get into the day to day, you wear a mom hat, you wear a dad hat, you wear a business hat, you wear a brother, sister, son hat, you wear the, I have to make decisions on stupid things like utilities, the landscaper hat. You wear all those hats. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is we have to be on the same page. So me and Gio have to be best friends, and we have to have consistent, like heart-to-heart debriefings. And when something's going on, not just debrief on like the logical level, but also where are you at with your life, with my life? Are we happy with where we're going? Just having like these very meta style conversations that I think you probably had when you first start dating, but a lot of people end up losing it. And I think that's how a lot of marriages fall apart, because when you're dating, it's all about, oh, you're into me, I'm into you. What's your dreams? What's my dream? How can we live our dreams together? And it's beautiful. Then when you start having a mortgage, it's like, hey, babe, did you take out the trash? Okay, because who's picking up the kids? Then everything's so logistical, and then your bandwidth is filled up with all these like very transactional things, and you lose sight of we're supposed to be best friends, partners for life. And so for us, it's really important to stay that way. And because we are that way, when it comes time to like move into Vegas, it's literally like true conversations. Hey, babe, this is what I'm thinking. We have to work remote. Fuck it. Why don't we try to move to Vegas? Are you down? I'm down. Cool. I'm going to hit up a real estate agent. I'll try to get 20 places. You tell me what kind of house neighborhood you're looking for, and it's just it moves very, very fast with me and Gio. It doesn't have to be like this continuous coaxing process where I've seen with some of my other friends' relationships who ended up moving too. It'll be like a 3-year process, because I feel like they're starting from here and they have to get on the same page. Whereas I feel like me and Gio are usually always on the same page, if not 1 or 2 conversations away from getting back on the same page, because we stay close. Like we prioritize our best friendness over anything.
Oh, we've heard that before, huh, Gabe?
Dude, that's the mic drop right there. But I love how you brought it up, man. Dude, it's such a reminder that I try and take so seriously, because we're in such a beginner stage of having kids, really trying to get in front of it. Because the thing that you brought up that I think is so important is like, you might not realize that drift is happening early on. And if
you don't even feel it.
Yeah. And if you if you let the drift happen too long, not saying that, you can't bring it back together, but it's just more work. It's a lot more work because you haven't realized that you've been drifting for these 2 years. So trying to stay on top of it early on, because to your point, man, it's like, did you buy the diapers? Did you do like, there's just so many more things on the checklist that like, it leaves so little time for like, babe, how are you feeling? Like, what's going on? What trip do we want to take? What do we want to do? So I love that reminder, man. I thought you broke it up.
Our toughest time was probably like 2014, 2015. And this is when like the whole JK side of things was full blast, where he had like 4 channels. We're just a few years into Barbell Brigade. And literally we became like roommates and business partners. And then when we got home, we were so exhausted, we would just watch Sons of Anarchy just to like veg out. And then we would literally fall asleep. And so we're just roommates that are doing things together. And then it ended up being like, yo, where are we? And then now you start building like things that if you don't live up to each other's standard, instead of like coming from a nurturing place, like, oh, what's going on? Now it starts forming resentment, And then once you start feeling that resentment for them, it's like, oh, you're the reason why this is happening. You're the reason why this is happening. And that was when it was really, really tough. And then that's when we had to like really buckle down and go, oh shit, we lost our best friendness. And you guys are in the best friend phase when your significant other messes up on something and the first person that gets their back is you. Oh, you know what? Gio didn't do that because she must have been exhausted from last night. No problem. I'll do this. Or Bart didn't do something the day he said he was going to do. Oh, no problem. It's because he did whatever. Like when you guys are really in love with each other, the first person to get the other person's back is usually yourself. But the minute, if they're the first scapegoat, that's when there's like a big problem. And that's a huge sign that there's distance that's being created.
Yeah, I think the word you used, responsibilities and a lot of these things, transactional was the word you used. And I like that, and we talk about this a lot on the show where, when Ava was first diagnosed with leukemia, one of the nurses, the recommendation she gave me was like, always keep your date nights. And I remember at the time, we've talked about this again on the show multiple times where like, at first it kind of threw me off, but now like in hindsight, here I am all these years later and like, dude, that's what it takes. That's what it takes because that does all the things that you're talking about, right? Because you are so transactional when you're in these moments and you need to be. But you got to be able to detach from that and be able to make sure you keep your relationship strong. So, dude, I think the raccoon dick example of moving to Vegas led us to a really cool topic that I wasn't expecting. I will say this, Bart, I always love catching up with you. We talk all the time and I just think that we need to, have more of these type of conversations, just talking about being a dad, being a husband. I do want to be sensitive of your time. I mean, Gabe, I talk to Bart a lot, but anything kind of to finish out with him?
No, man, I appreciate this. We're going to have you back on. We say that.
Oh, you're saying it. Man. Oh gosh. Bart, I get all kinds of shit from Gabe because not all kinds of shit. I do say a lot. Too much. I do. I'll be honest. Hey, we got to get you back on. And but now you said it, Gabe. So now we got to get it back on.
Awesome. Thank you, man.
Yeah, we got a lot of things we got to touch on. No, this was fun, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, a couple of things in the future. Definitely want to talk about your time as a Marine and, kind of lessons learned about discipline and obviously talk about UCLA and kind of like the whole, there's a lot more we can unpack. But I think for today's episode, man, I just feel like that was really, really powerful for me. I really appreciate your time. For anyone who wants to know more about, everything you got going on, whether it's the brick and mortar in LA or Just Kidding or whatever else, where's the best place to go? Is it Instagram?
Yeah, if you go to my Instagram, it's Bart Kwan, BartKwan, and then I post about everything there, like the gym in LA, Barbell Brigade, Just Kidding News, all that stuff.
Dude. All right, well, make sure to go check out our good buddy, Bart Kwan. We appreciate you guys for checking out this episode. Make sure to go back, check out all the other amazing guests we've had. We also have a bunch of solo episodes with Gabe and I where we drop just what's going on in our life. But most importantly, keep training hard.